Takes a second. Good morning and welcome to the AutoHub show for our month beginning show this year, since it kind of happened in a weird way. Usually it's month end and then month beginning, but this year it's not. And if you're a cyber person, I hear it's Cyber Monday. If you didn't get enough shopping done last week, I hear the cyber people are all over it. I'm going to start with a quick video, and this video is actually from an interview that I'm going to drop later this week. And it is with Mr. Steves II from Scott Auto Group. So stay tuned for the full interview, which will be live, hopefully, once I get approval this week. This is just a little bit of it. It's actually an hour-long interview. It may not be this long in reality, but here we go.
An accident. Actually, not really. I started very early. I actually bought and sold my first car when I was 12 years old. That's the benefit of being the second. Is, you could get my dad's name on the title pretty easy. So, we won't say what state we're in and when that happened, but you can imagine my mom's surprised face when I drove home with my bicycle in the trunk of an old beat up Camaro. And what are you going to do with that thing, Well, they weren't laughing a couple of weeks later after, a tune up and a wash up, and we doubled my money. And that kind of got things started. So, always had a passion for cars, loved them. I was the kid that instead of comic books, I was reading Auto Trader magazines. I was at the convenience store waiting for them to come out with the, ink all over my finger. So, got in real early. But officially started in the car business in 1998 at 22 while I was finishing up my college career.
Fantastic. That actually reminds me a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Jimmy Pattison, but Jimmy Pattison is one of the wealthiest Canadians. He owns companies also in the U.S., including Ripley's, believe it or not. He has about 60,000 employees. His combined companies made about $14 billion last year. And he started selling cars in high school as a young man. He's 94 now. I met him a year and a half ago. And he said, they asked him, I saw an interview with him, and they're asking him, they said, okay, so when you sold cars in college, Jimmy, did you walk home? He goes, oh, no, they gave me a ride.
Yeah.
Which I thought was hilarious. But what was funny about the interview is that he spent most of the time during the interview talking about how he really loves banks. No, I'm just kidding. He really dislikes them. But it was kind of interesting hearing sort of the annal of, I went from this bank to this bank to this bank to this bank. It was just kind of funny. But even though he's in multiple industries, he's still a car guy. Obviously has
I think once the car guy, once he gets in your blood, it's hard to get it out. That's for sure.
So that's a piece of the interview with Lloyd Steves II from Scott Auto Group. That interview should be live this week. Stay tuned for it on our YouTube channel and anywhere you get podcasts. It probably isn't going to be its full 1 hour length, just because we still have to agree on the final. But at the end of the day, it was a great interview. Scott Auto Group, if you're not familiar, I think they're based out of Maryland somewhere. I'm not sure, but a bunch of different rooftops. So it was kind of interesting. His biggest challenge,
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, his biggest challenge is staff. Shocking. So he's working with Larry already. So just so you, in case you knew, but he just hired 15 new salespeople just last week. Here we go.
My name's Tony Moore. I'm the general manager of Fred Beats Kia and Landmark. Just wanted to take a minute to talk about Larry Phillips and Career Changers USA. Larry and I have been working together for about the last 12 years now. And anything I've ever needed as far as recruiting, training, Larry's been right there. Larry's got me salespeople, he's got me managers, he's got me technicians even through the toughest times in the industry. And he is just the kind of guy who's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. But Larry also has the expertise to back it up. When he was in the dealership world, he was a top performer. And that's really important to my staff, especially as it pertains to training. a lot of people can come in and teach out of a textbook, but Larry has a real world experience dealing with customers, dealing with situations in dealerships that we go through on a daily basis and try to train them on. But Larry's been through it, so he can really empathize with the people and tell you what's worked for him and maybe what way not to go. Larry is just always at a 10. I mean, his energy level is always up there. And I think people, they just love that and they feed off of it. He's not faking it. He is genuinely excited to come in and help you. He's excited to come in and help grow your business. And he's one of those people who just really enjoys seeing dealers succeed and have a lot of fun at the same time.
Life is about connection. Having a support system to lean on. And roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
So what would your dealership feel like if your entire sales staff was literally on fire, your sales and service staff? They were nonstop all over social media, completely dominating your marketplace. They could do it in 30 days or less and then continue their education to do it for an entire 6 months or a year. You literally would completely take over the entire marketplace and no one would be able to compete with you. And that's what we can do for you. So when you're walking around your community, whether you're at local restaurants or you're going to the gym, you don't want to be bothered? Fine, you won't be bothered. But a lot of people will walk up to you and say, oh my God, I love your social media. Your staff is amazing. We love what you're doing in the community. We want to come buy a car from you. We want to get an oil change at your dealership. Your community is absolutely going to love you. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on. You could be on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms. You will literally be all over the place. And not only will you have ads running, but your own staff is going to be promoting your brand and promoting themselves within the dealership and within the business. So it's like running an ad times 100-fold because your entire staff is participating in the process. I've traveled all over North America. I've trained Toyota. I've trained Nissan. I've been to driving sales. I've been to Women in Auto. I get hired as a speaker for conferences at universities all over the country. And I can help change the trajectory of your dealership right now.
And good morning. So we have a new sponsor for the new season for 2025. And I'm going to start with Brandy. Welcome, Brandy. I think you've been on the show before, but maybe, Brandy, you can tell us a little bit more about what you do and a little bit more about your company, just because, A, you're new, and B, it's interesting. Go ahead.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Happy to be on this panel. I'm looking forward to the conversation. My name is Brandy. I've been in auto and asset financing since I was 18 years old. I have spent the last 4 years building what we call a new DMD. So like a DMS, only better. It's called Disclosed Technologies Corp. And one of the spring-offs that we're super excited that it'll launch at the same time is called MotoClose. So a new third-party platform for buy and sell for both consumers and dealers.
Fantastic. And you're located in the really warm city this time of year of Edmonton, Alberta. But I hear the people in Ontario are complaining. They got some snow. I was laughing hard at that one. Anyway.
yeah, you got to be tough to live in Edmonton. Let's just put it that way for sure.
Understood. So, Doug, we were talking a little bit about your project. Maybe you could share a little details on A to Z or A to Z sync, depending on where you're from. Go ahead.
Well, A to Z Sync, we've been around for years working on the end-to-end solution from digital retailing through to, the signing of documents. We mastered that years ago. And a year ago, we were selected as the technology partner for Amazon for the selling of cars on Amazon. And we were charging down the road, and soon we'll be, going live with our initial sponsored dealers with Hyundai. So really exciting things coming along here at A to Z.
Fantastic. I guess you're happy you're not dealing with Stellantis. I hear their CEO just got canned last week. Global CEO. Unfortunate. Hopefully you can find something else to do. Peter, I see you have a few logos. Is that, do you get like the shirt with that, with like the patches, like the race car drivers?
You know, it's just a couple of the companies that I represent behind me.
Yep.
That are I changed the dashboard because I'm on so many different opportunity or programs, so that people can see some of the great people out there that are making changes in the automotive world. So that's the whole thing. But primarily, I'm representing vendors now over dealers because dealers are still having those challenges with, we've always done it this way.
Yeah, there's actually a webinar I'm going to be on later this week with a dealer. I won't talk about his name because he posts a lot about how everyone should give everything away for free for 6 months or something. But
we know who that is.
Yeah, but he's doing a vendor Zoom thing later this week, and I was going to go on just for kicks, but more importantly, really to see what he has to say live, because it's always hard to see when you see snippets all the time. But I thought that was kind of funny. But also, when I see all the different logos, the other thing that was kind of interesting was, as we prepare for NADA 2025 in New Orleans, it's interesting to see that dealers, him included, no names mentioned, they're looking for, say, a playbook of the right partners. And there was actually, I think, I'm not sure who it was online, was saying, hey, there's all these big infographics of all the tech companies and other industries. Why isn't there one in auto? And I was sitting there going, there should be, because this stuff changes. I don't know.
Greenfield publishes it every week.
Yeah, he's published every week. Okay. Anyway, someone from another industry was like, this should be created. So I thought that was kind of funny. But more importantly, I think it'd be funny to send a big poster to that dealer we mentioned. Larry, good morning. I interviewed Mr. Steve's the second, Lloyd, on Friday. The interview should be up hopefully this week. He was singing your praises. Says he said he's hired 15 salesmen recently, and that's his biggest challenge for 2025. What are you feeling in the I guess the staffing side? I mean, what do you think is the biggest challenge dealers are facing in staffing?
The biggest challenge is going to be finding the right people, keeping them motivated, trying to get their heads wrapped around the fact that it's no longer point at the car, say that's the price. If you don't want it, those 5 people will. And just getting back to business. I always tell people when they're trying to break a slump, rather than try anything exotic, remember what worked for you before and get back to the basics. You know the drilling, and everybody on the show does. Why did people stop selling cars? They stopped taking demos. They stopped engaging. They stopped building rapport. So I think, like with everything else, when you see a shakeup, when you see industries going through some gyrations, it's just getting back to the basics.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I saw this post. I think it was today. It might have been yesterday. It was someone trying to teach new grads how to use AI to hack job ads. And I was kind of laughing. I'm like, okay, so the HR people are not only not reading the resumes anymore, they're believing what AI is talking about who the person is, and they're putting them on a short list. So I was kind of laughing. I was like, wow, you got someone trying to manipulate on one side, you got someone else on the other side too lazy to read it.
Well, it's how about if we had introduction 101 to the phone and how to smile, how to answer a phone, how to hold a conversation, and how to actually make eye contact. I say it all the time. The problem with computers is they can't empathize. They can't put their arm around you, and they can't smile. But if we can do that and then tie in with technical stuff, we own the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was funny. I went to my local dealer to get a recall done on my car, and they called me the night before saying, hey, would you like to buy a new vehicle if the numbers work? I said, yeah, I'm always interested in an offer. Like, no problem. I got there. I dropped the car off at 7:30, so I was sitting in the waiting room or whatever for a while. And the salesman who booked the appointment didn't even show up till like 9:30. By that point, there was another salesman who was interested in working with me, so it's kind of funny. But it was hilarious.
You'd be surprised, and I know I sound like a million years old here.
Yeah.
How much trouble we've gotten into as a society because we don't write anything down. Because there's no concrete paper schedule. People type stuff into their phone, they get 9 million other messages, and it just evaporates. I mean, You know, I couldn't exist if listen, again, gonna sound like a dinosaur. I couldn't wait to buy my 2025 book. I've already got a bunch of things filled up, including
Right.
NADA.
Oh,
But
100%.
you gotta embrace the technical wizardry of guys like Doug. And man, there's nothing technical that Peter doesn't seem to grasp and understand. But you still have to be a human being. I think if it's, Doug will agree, if it's one or the other, you're in trouble. If it's both, what an edge you have in this world.
Right.
Yep, exactly right. Technology should support the human element.
So, Brandy,
And
you're
rather
new.
than replace it, Doug, which is what a lot of people think. Yeah, we'll slap the robot in. And I made Ian laugh a couple weeks ago. I said the problem with robots is you'll never find a way to make them as dumb and lazy as regular salespeople.
So, Brandy, you're new in tech and auto. I mean, what are you hearing from dealers? You're out there talking to them. You got something going on in tech. I mean, what inspired you to start the company? But more importantly, what are dealers saying
For myself, I'm not a tech person. I'm a solutions person. I actually, exactly what we're saying, I wanted to use tech to solve the problems that so many dealerships have. For me, it started out as an F9 menu. So while that's incorporated, and that's probably, you know, my favorite part of the system, just because that's my history. As I continuously build it, which is also why it took so long, is I kept adding solutions that while I was there, it was like, you know what, I'm here, let's solve that problem at the same time.
Right.
And so it was really about, solving problems that I saw dealers have. And sadly, you know, as I talk to dealers, that is their first question. It's almost like it's the buzzword that nobody really understands the power of, you know? They all want to talk about AI incorporated into the system, but nobody actually realizes really what that'll actually do to the bigger picture.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
you're talking about jobs here, you know, like we're making this AI so smart that it's going to replace many of the people on the initial side. You know, where we lag as humans is we don't respond fast enough to a lead. We take it for granted. We make appointments, they show up, and we think it's okay to disrespect the time as humans.
oh yeah, I mean that's what the funny thing was. So I'm sitting there with the salesman. I get a call from the other sales lady who just showed up, and I'm like, "You booked the appointment. You should probably be here before me."
Absolutely.
I don't know. Call me crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's funny that you bring that up because we're doing an integration with a company to do real-time language translation. And in addition to real-time language translation with vid calls, it'll be on websites as well. And we're in 100 websites are already live, about 175 and counting with real-time language translation. But the funny thing, just to beat on the tech guy a little bit from one of the website providers, which I won't mention, was, oh, we wanted some data on these websites that are live. He goes, oh, I took the whole week off. I was like, how did your top tech guy at a website company take the entire Thanksgiving week off? Like, how does that happen? It's like, yeah, I work for Apple. I'm taking the week off during Black Friday.
That's like taking month end off.
Yeah, like, what are you doing? How is that possible? How does that happen?
Do you have to be told? Yeah.
I don't know. It's like
people out there do have to be told not to take month off.
Yeah, like I sell cars. I'm going to take all Saturdays off, or all Mondays off, or all Saturdays and Mondays off. Anyway, so Peter, you represent a few companies. What's the biggest challenge with the array of patches?
Well, right now the biggest thing, right, is the noise. There's so much noise out there. You can take any vertical and say, well, you have something that will engage into that vertical. Well, people go, well, there's 18 other companies that do it. Well, the challenge is most people don't have the time to research that those 18 other companies don't do it. And that's the biggest challenge out there that I find. When you look at the dealership and a good friend of mine says there's a dealership that you run and a dealership you think you run. They're two different operations. And with that is you have a GM. The average GM has 10 verticals. 10 verticals in an 8-hour day gives them about 35 minutes per vertical to recognize what's going on. And that's if they're operating at optimum efficiency. If those verticals are having any challenges, that time gets removed from the other verticals, and therefore they get lagged in their visibility. So what happens is, if you can find a situation where you have a technology that can improve that efficiency, and you just mentioned that one dealer that says, I don't answer any phone calls, I don't answer any emails, I don't answer any DMs, I don't answer anything, but yet he wants free events given to him for usage, and then he wants 24 hours, 7 day a week support, and he wants this and he wants that, and then he'll decide if the imaginary ROI is actually there for him to move forward. But the funny part about that is, the next day after posting that, he says, I invented this new acquisition tool and everyone should have it. And so he puts it out there. Well, that big challenge that we're seeing is that people don't have a dedicated person in the store to bring that efficiency to the store, because it's never been there. It never was a position in a dealership before, and we fall prey to, this is the way we've always done it. Larry will say it, I'll say it, Doug will say it. We've taken the sales process that was invented over 70 years ago and never changed it, and the results have never changed. We're still at 10 cars a person for those results. And that is the biggest challenge. People want more, and they say technology should give us that. Well, CRMs, the invention of the internet didn't change anything. The invention of CRMs didn't change anything. The invention of social media didn't change anything, because we're still at the same numbers. We're just not training the people properly and coaching them how to affect the change. And that's the biggest challenge that I see. Like, I have a number of platforms out there that you get intelligence that you've never had before, but they're not acting on it.
Yeah, I mean, I always use the example of April Simmons from Horn, and she was talking on the AIO show about how she bought its AI, and then it's like, okay, this dealer can't handle that, this dealership can't handle it, maybe this one will work. And I thought it was interesting, because she really screens that for the group and is responsible for, getting the stakeholders involved. But even she was like, hey, like, they're just not ready. Like, they have to go back to basics and figure out the stuff they're already not doing. And the thing that was interesting is, I use MailChimp for my email list for the show. And what I thought was funny is, I've been using it for a while. They now have better interaction on their iPhone app or their Android app than they do, in terms of more features than they do on the website for the company, which I thought was really interesting. But more importantly, as you look at these different tools, they need to make sense. I mean, I use the example of Reggie.ai for LinkedIn. It's a great tool, but these tools change so quickly that it's hard to stay ahead of it, especially if you're in the car business and writing stuff down with a pen and paper might be a challenge. So what do you think they should focus on then, as we roll into, instead of buying everything in NADA 2025, what do you think, is the one or two areas that maybe they want to look at some solutions versus 20?
The very first thing about NADA 2025 is, and again, I get in trouble all the time because I shoot from the hip, and that's just who I am. Most people are going to NADA without a plan, and they want to go about 8, 10, 12 seminars. And when they take 12 seminars at an hour-long seminar, that's 12 hours of a 20-hour span into what the show floor is open for. So you got 8 hours. Now you got 8 hours to see 500 vendors.
Yeah.
How are you going to get through that? It's an impossibility. So especially when you got half the people going there and saying, well, I got to go see CDK because CDK is having this party and I got to go get a ticket to this party. And I have to go to this, like, I got to go to Digital Airstrike.
Of course you do.
Party. And I have to go to, so that now you're down to about 3 hours for your whole NADA show to go through 500 vendors. The announcement of vendors was a month and a half ago. You should have your entire plan done by now. And I have meetings this week with 4 vendors that are looking for NADA plans to maximize their opportunities at the show. I said, you're too late.
Well, I agree with you. Really, when I was funny, I was working a booth. I don't know if it was last year. Might have been last year. Anyway, I was talking to the booth guys about it, and I asked them, how far in advance do you plan NADA? And they said at least 6 months. And I said, if you're doing it less than that, you're probably in trouble. But the thing that was really interesting from that booth, and I remember working the booth doing some interviews one year, was that they were constantly busy, but more importantly, the sales manager who was working with the team on the floor basically was, every day, early morning, was there motivating people, much like you would a dealership. Where some of the brands, and I'm not trying to beat anyone up, but I still remember when Techion showed up in front of Reynolds the first year that Techion was at the show, and it was like Techion had it all done. Reynolds was trying to figure out what happened. So it's not just having a booth, even if that's a 30 by 50 or a 50 by 100 or whatever the scale is. It's about how are you organizing that time, but more importantly, what's your game plan? And I think when you look at it today, and I'm going to be at the Velo booth this year, so that should be interesting just because they bought an old sponsor of the show. So that should be interesting to see how that's integrated. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of options. But to your point, if I'm looking at a fixed ops improvement this year, if I'm looking at a variable ops improvement, or if I'm looking at systems, I should have 3 or 4 things that I'm looking at and then really look ahead of time at the floor plan and say, okay, I need to visit these 20 companies and maybe set the time.
Ian and Peter, think about it. If the analogy is perfect, what's wrong with salespeople flows down from what's wrong with dealers and GMs. It's like having a navigation system and not setting coordinates. Salespeople that go into dealerships hoping a stranger comes in with an ad in his hand aren't as effective as people that have it plotted out, planned, and have prospected in their appointments and know what's going to happen and when as best as they can. It's like everything else. If you let things happen, who the hell knows what's going to happen? But the more you plan, the more disciplined you are with how you're structuring your day, the more effective you're going to be.
Let's use David Long as an example, and I've seen him at many NADAs, but also the guys from Pioneer. I mean, they're there for 2 days. They're not there for the whole time. They have very, very succinct plans. They want to look at these 10 things or these 5 things or whatever it might be, right? I mean, it's easy to get lost in the woods at NADA or SEMA. SEMA probably easier. But, you don't need to see 20 digital marketing companies. You probably only need to see 2 or 3 if that's what you're looking at. You don't need to see everybody selling a car wash unless you're looking for a car wash. Like, there's just no need for that, right?
Well, you also send the people that are decision makers, because it's a game of telephone at that point where you're expecting to hear back what you're actually getting. So it's a challenge, and where I see it, the other thing is the ignorance of what is actually available to people. Like, and the other side of that ignorance channel is the ignorance of the operational effect of those things. And Doug and I have had many conversations about the one person, one price model and the actual effect on the GP versus the effect on the NP. The NP is going to go up, the GP is going to go down. But dealers are so focused on GP, it's crazy. And I was on a call, I think it was last week, and someone asked me what with AI and with all this technology that's coming into play, who are the two number one redundant positions in a car dealership? And I said, very simple. The desk manager and the F&I manager. They're the two most redundant positions in a car dealership because technology today, you can eliminate them tomorrow. You can eliminate them tomorrow. You can replace them with a coach and basically a funding manager.
Right.
And that just to maximize, make sure that all your funding is being corrected. So you can call them an F&I director, but you do not need someone selling any information. You take someone, and we all know Stephen Apicilla. He's one of the great guys in this industry.
Yeah.
His F&I program is designed to be taken home and the decisions made at home rather than in a pressure situation where you're going to get clawbacks. We have to start meeting the customers where the customers want to be met, and we can't hold on to that asinine belief that we control. We're not in control.
Right.
We're so far from control, it's not even funny. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of Doug's platform is that you can start at any point and finish at any point. And the customer, all the customer does is be happy because you don't have to back up 10 steps to regain momentum again. And that's what the customer is wanting. And I bring the analogy of we're talking about NADA. We all have to fly there. Every one of us has to fly to NADA. Would we call up? We have two choices. We can go to third party or we can go direct. So if we go to the airline and we say, hey, you know what? I want a ticket to New Orleans. Okay, what day you want to fly? Okay, come on down to the airport and we'll tell you. We'll tell you the price. We'll tell you if we have a ticket. We'll tell you if we fly there. Would we ever deal with that airline or that third party again? No, but that's what we do in the car business.
Mhm.
And we expect that our customers will come back to us. We're blown away. We're maximizing our budgets on acquisition, not retention. We're doing so many things backwards that we can change simply by engaging proper technology, training the people in the process, and developing the people for a career, not a job. And that would solve 50% of our problems in automotive.
Well, that's the thing that's interesting you bring that up, because when I was at the Chrysler store for my recall, I would say the training on the service side of the house was far better. I mean, they had a whole procedure for pricing out tires, that pamphlet they printed out with all the different tires that explained it all. The lady in service was very good at communicating with me. They had Uber. They didn't have a shuttle, but they had Uber services if you needed it. I mean, it was very, very different from the sales side. But having been to a number of NADAs, Doug and Larry, and of course Peter, I had been as well. What are you looking for this year, other than it not being in Vegas?
Well, I want to step back a second and go back to this conversation because there's an awful lot of conversation about what dealers need to do, but I think there's a role that the vendor needs to play that isn't being performed on a regular basis. I'll give you a prime example. So I had a store reach out to me that wanted to go one person. And I dedicated an hour just educating them on one person, how hard it's going to be, and the challenges that they have to acknowledge, and why are they thinking about doing this. And in the end, they realized they didn't want to go one person. And I think too many times the vendors don't take the time to really drill down with the customer to find out what is it that you're trying to solve. And, let's really dig deep, because what you're thinking is not the end solution. And frankly, there's many times where we'll walk away from a deal because I'll tell them point blank, what you're looking for, we can't accomplish, or what we would need to accomplish, you're not willing to do, because it's a two-way street. And, when we do a kickoff call with the dealer, the very first thing that we do is we tell them, I expect you to be honest with me when I'm coming up short. And the dealer always says, I'll do that. And I go, but I'm going to do the same with you. And if we don't have that type of relationship, this whole thing is worthless, because the vendor has to hold the dealer accountable. the vendor has to not sell just to sell, because all you're gonna end up with is a bunch of churn.
Right.
And you have to be willing to say, what you're looking for, I don't have, but this company over here, that's who you want. That's what you're looking for. And I don't think enough of that is done where dealers are willing to walk away from a deal. And I mean, Brandy's sitting there nodding up and down. And I'm sure, Larry, you've probably dealt with it where they want you to come in and change the world, but they're not willing to, you know, have people that are going to attend the training sessions and really going to be part of it. It's a waste of your time and the money's not worth it. And I don't think enough vendors take that type of responsibility and that type of, you know, do the due diligence to say, this isn't right. What you're looking for isn't right.
Yeah.
And I'd throw that out to you guys and see what you guys all think of that.
So I think if the vendor, you happen to be a man of integrity, Doug, and not only integrity, but you're a pragmatist. If you set yourself up or let the dealer set themselves up to fail, they're going to fail, and the person they're going to blame is you, not themselves. So to not be smart enough up front to say, listen, to make this work, this is what's going to happen. But I think a lot of vendors just take the point of least resistance, and they're afraid to be too straightforward because they're afraid they won't get the business. Even though if they get the business and it's set up wrong, it's going to kill their next opportunity.
Right. Exactly right.
Oh, I'd agree
Well,
100%.
Brandy, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. Even I could not stop nodding. Sorry to be so, yeah. But no, you know what? That's exactly it. I have one beta store that came to me and she's like, "Hey, Brandy," which she doesn't pay. She's like, "I'm paying for all these different solutions and, you know, they can't get for me what I want. And can you do it?" And I was like, exactly to, you know, the partner's side too. And I was like, you're asking your freebie if they can do what the ones you pay for can't. I just want to make sure I understand that right? Like it is that two-way street. And also exactly what Larry said, it is about integrity. You only have to waste your time one or two times for the person to go, I'm going to catch those a little bit earlier in my pitch, and I'm going to recognize where it makes sense to just say, actually, I'm probably not the best solution for you. And that might be a lesson that takes you one time or 5 times. But I do believe eventually it would catch up. Absolutely.
That's because a lot of vendors think like a lot of salespeople. They think short term rather than long term. Right. I wrote a book, Randy, and in it I put great line. You don't mind me humbly saying, they're not annoyances, they're annuities. These people can get you so much business, and man, what's it worth to have a dealer tell another dealer, yeah, I just used Doug, I just used Brandy, I used Peter, I used Larry, they were great. That's 100 times, maybe 1,000 times more effective than knocking on their door cold calling. But the only way that's going to work is if you set up a situation where everybody's going to win, rather than, yep, I grabbed a check, who the hell cares? Doug, when I was a Cadillac dealer, I won't mention their name, but there's a dealer that's one of these, they want to sell everybody one car. All their advertising is a little weird. It's amazing they haven't been busted. And I stood up and I was talking about co-op and I wanted more help from Cadillac. And I said, I want to sell everybody I ever met a car, and then every one of their friends, relatives, people that cut their hair. And the guy hugged me after the meeting and said, that's funny, Feldman. I just want to sell everybody one car. I hope I never see him again. If that's your attitude, I got the check, who cares? You're going to get exactly what you think, a lot of one-shots. And the only way to be successful in anything, particularly this business, is repeat referral. What's the sense of having a restaurant? You go there once and said the food sucks, let's not go back.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about that on the interview last week. I said, how many times does it take you go into a restaurant before you're sold? Usually it's 3 visits. I think that's the math. And I would argue the same with car dealers. Yeah, you might buy the car there, but if your service experience the first 2 times you're there is sucky and nobody calls you, chances of you going back are probably 0.
Well, and I'll be honest, I had to even check myself recently because my brother pointed it out. We were out and I was doing a demo with him on some updates, and he's like, the receptionist came over, we all had a chuckle, and then the waitress, she left, and I was right back to it. He's like, there's Brandy, right back to work. And as funny as it was, I have to stop selling and start helping. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I was most successful, it's not when I was like all out for that agenda, right? I want to hear your problems and I want to solve them. And that's sales. That's who stands out in sales, is the people that aren't selling, that they're there to help. And I recently even had to check myself in the process. So
well, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing, is that if you have a deep enough conversation with somebody, they'll come to their own conclusions. And all you do is help guide them down the path. And if your platform makes sense, they'll come to their own conclusion. But if it doesn't, they'll conclude that accordingly. You know, there's too many salespeople that are trying to put a square peg into a round hole.
Because they don't listen as much as they talk.
Exactly right. And what we need to do is you need to take the time to define the shape of the hole, and then figure out if you have something that fits.
I love that. I watched a movie on the weekend. It was the Nike story about signing Air Jordan. And the salesman, no matter what happened, was thinking outside the box. And when people said, "Oh, you can't do this and you can't do that, you shouldn't do this," and I remember there was one scene where he's talking to the agent about could he have a meeting with Michael Jordan. He goes, "Oh no, they're not interested. Don't call them. You can't do that." So then he showed up in person at the parents' house, and then he went back and the agent tore his head off on a phone call, and he goes, "Well, what happens if I get the deal? Oh, I'll be your best buddy." And he even had to convince the owner of Nike, like, "Okay, I want to bet all on black, and by the way, you got to do these 3 other things, and by the way, if it doesn't work out, our basketball division is going to be finished." So you want to sign off on that?
Conditional sales.
Yeah,
we do so much of that. There's a condition to the sale.
But the funny thing you bring up is it was all about the personal relationship. He got that deal not because of the shoe, not because of Nike, but because he built a relationship with the mother, and the mother made the deal. Like the mother was the check writer, not Michael Jordan. If the mother said you're going to go with these guys, that's what was going to happen. And it wasn't going to be done over a phone call.
That goes back to 2 things. One, the thing that Peter said, make sure the decision maker's there and finding the right decision maker. And the other lesson from that film, among many, is they didn't really want Michael Jordan.
No.
Because he wasn't perceived as the biggest star, crazy as that sounds now, but they still worked with it. How many times anybody that's ever worked on a sales floor has seen that phenomenon? "Oh man, you got the good up, I got the bad up." And meantime, the bad up turns out to be a fat deal, and the up that you thought was perfect disappears. Once we look at everybody as a buyer, as an opportunity, and a long-term opportunity, it reshapes the way we think we approach them.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. So I want to just address a couple things. First is saying no, the ability of saying no, and that is so, and I hate using this word with it. It's empowering, because it actually creates self-worth by saying no. And too often, whether it's us as vendors or salespeople on the floor or whatever, they're chasing the almighty dollar, and they don't recognize that chase is going to limit the profitability. And when I say profitability comes from long-term customer value. It doesn't come from a one and done. It doesn't come from the churn method. How many gyms do we see go out of business because they work on the churn method? How many cell phone companies are starving for business because they work on a churn method? It's awful. So why should we should recognize that we want to build long-term customer relationships, whether we're a vendor or a salesperson, and that is by providing them what is good for them. If it's not good for them and it's not good for you, then there's no way you should be doing business. I've personally this year I've turned away 6 large automotive companies and said no to them because they were looking for things that were unattainable. They were looking for free. They were looking for all kinds of different things that just didn't make any sense. And when I said no to them, they were shocked.
Well, I I always use the example of a buddy of mine. I used to work with him when I worked for Nissan, and he was looking at a job, and he got to the final interview, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm just not really interested in this job." They're like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Well, I thought about it. It's not going to be interested, so I'm just going to take off." And I think the HR person almost fell out of her chair.
Yeah, well, there's
Recording stopped.
there's a number of companies out there that I've done that to, and they were like, "What? You mean you're not going to go out and help us close business?" No. Why would I? Why would I go do that to be not paid to do so? First of all, I don't do any paid performance, and everyone knows that. I work under a retainer for networking, and it's a challenge when all these companies go, "Well, we don't do that." Well, then you're not with me.
There's horses for courses. There's horses for courses.
There's a lot.
Oh, and just so you know, Zoom has AI recording built in with the note taking now. Just so you know, if you're using Otter or something else, Zoom's already got that. So I can send you guys a thing at the end. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, I'm saying there's a lot of strength in saying no.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of strength. The one thing that you can't, as a vendor, you cannot sacrifice your integrity.
No, and the
There's
other
no
thing is,
deal that's worth that.
there's a good buddy of mine, Bob Manor. He's doing a lot of LinkedIn posting and things like that. And Bob showed me something at halfway through this year, and it really transferred my business. Don't do anything for nothing. Nothing for nothing. Well,
Right.
yeah, I can't go into a dealership and say, "Hey, can you do an oil change, rotate my tires, do this, and give me a full detail." And then I'll decide if you're the dealer I want to deal with. No dealer would do that.
You're establishing your worth is worthless.
Exactly. And in doing so, Bob actually has on his website a direct link to payment to talk to him. I want to talk to him. There's a direct link to payment. I'm like a lawyer. You pay for my hourly rate. And that's it. I'll rebate it back from our contract, but you're not wasting my time. You're not picking. He calls it picking my brain. And there's so often, so many people will call up and spend time utilizing the 40 plus years experience I have, the 40 years that Larry has, the 30 years plus that you have. And Doug, you've been 25 years in the business?
30 plus.
30 plus, yeah. So people will call Brandy, you've been, yeah, I looked at your LinkedIn, you're multi-decades as well. They'll call you up and they'll say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Well, what do you want from this? And that's where we have to stand up and when we talk about that dealer, I was one of the few people to smack him back on LinkedIn because he
does this all the time, like all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's the broken window syndrome. If you allow the broken windows to remain there, it'll remain there.
Yeah.
And
No, it doesn't remain there. Peter, it grows. They feel that what destroys the neighborhood is people stop taking pride in the area, and then things exacerbate and get worse.
Exactly, and we can't do that. And I believe it was Greenfield in his book said that, and I don't know who he got it off of, but he said in the next 5 years the industry is going to change greater than the last 50, and I agree with that. We have technology coming in. We have different processes. We have different demands. COVID was a very unique thing for the automotive world. It taught dealerships that they could make an incredible amount of profit, and they did. But it also taught them, because they went that route, that they're going to have a greater amount of challenges, because now with everything that happened, customers are used to digital retailing. I said it 4 years ago, before Doug's company got involved, I said, if you don't think Amazon's just sitting in the wings trying to figure it out before they do get into it, you're mistaken. My personal belief was I thought Amazon was going to buy Carvana when Carvana dipped down to like $1 something a share, and I thought they were going to use that as a distribution center. That was my mistake, but I thought it was there. But they're engaged. If you think it's not, if Hyundai's going to be the only manufacturer that's going to have a distribution channel through them, you're mistaken. And
You're right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, actually, Honda, in their process already for many years in your online, I'm gonna dress up my vehicle, I'm gonna work out my payment, they are already putting warranty, their ancillary package lineups, everything is already being offered when the client's building the unit. So yeah, digital retailing, there's ways that they are inconspicuously coming out and testing these waters, even if it's just on how many warranties, what is the penetration they can get from a mere offering on a screen. Absolutely, and you're right, it's been in the process for many years, and if you're behind, you're reactive rather than proactive if you're not.
Look at what Toyota's doing with their new websites.
Yep.
You can only have one call to action. You can't have more than one. If the chat box pops up, that's the only time it can pop up. If it gets clicked off by the customer, it can never return.
No, well, I mean, it's a franchise at the end of the day. I mean, and that's the thing that I think I've been shocked about from a automotive standpoint for most of my life is if I'm buying, say, for example, and there was an example recently in Toronto with a Second Cup franchise where someone actually lost it for something they did. But if you looked at McDonald's as a restaurant or Burger King or Starbucks, would Starbucks tolerate a location doing it their own way? No. You're representing that brand. Toyota is a good example. Porsche did this a number of years ago with a company in Spain. But, at the end of the day, yeah, there should be a process that represents that brand and their customers. I mean, Jaguar just proved that they didn't understand their customers. But, at the end of the day, I mean, does anyone want to be associated with that brand again? I don't know. But, from a point of view, if I own a franchise or multiple franchises, that experience from franchise to franchise, at least online and in store, should be similar. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be identical, but it should be reflective of that customer and the brand. I mean, if it isn't,
for a few reasons, people come to expect it. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say that's the other missing piece to be successful long term: consistency. It's not important to be great once. I'd rather you be real good all the time. That your behavior mirrors your behavior. Now, that doesn't mean if your behavior is wrong, you can't change it or get on a different track.
Right.
But consistency will kill you. And we, as human beings, we tend to be inconsistent and contradict our own behavior. So what makes us interesting as human beings, but as a business model, you want consistency. Listen, you may be RFK Jr. and not like fast food. But I'll tell you what, I don't care if you're in Canada or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. If you go to McDonald's, you're going to get good French fries. You're not. This is the way we do it. And if you're consistent in a positive manner with how you greet people, how you follow up with people, and how you treat them in a manner that gives this message, we want you to come back and we value you. You can't lose, right, Brandy?
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. Is all of those processes are tried and tested. And then more importantly, they're also a formula, whether it's your OEM or your franchise partner, they're a formula for success. These people actually know, there's reasons that leasing should be incorporated into every proposal because that's a retention tool. Everything behind it, there's a method to the madness. So yeah, not only the most.
The only thing that upsets me is Peter mentioned some kind of method where if the chat box doesn't work, you can never go back. Peter, where the heck is that method for Thanksgiving? Because there were some relatives I would have liked to have never seen.
a little too chatty about the wrong topics.
In the end, I'm going to close with this because I got to hop off a little bit early. But there's two things that I wanted to say. One, in the end, everybody wants peace of mind, and what peace of mind is a predictable outcome. If X happens, Y will occur. dealerships aren't very good at developing peace of mind in their operations, let alone delivering that for customers. And the other thing I'll say is this whole AI thing, I think AI should be called assisted intelligence because HI is what matters most, which is human intelligence. And any AI should only assist the human to be better at what they're doing. And I'll close with that, but I got to run, you guys.
No problem.
I wish you all well.
Well, check out the core AI interview if you're curious about how AI is going to move over the next 10 years. Had a really brilliant gentleman on that, Mr. Smith, talking about core AI and the stages. The interview I did of him, the stages they had, how that's going to roll out over the next 5 to 10 years. But we almost out of time anyway. I'm getting final thoughts, so let's start with Brandy.
Yeah, well, no, don't start with Brandy.
Okay.
I have so many final thoughts.
No problem. Let's start with Larry then. Larry, what do you say?
Well, we've got the NADA is coming up. We're going into a new year. There's a tremendous amount of optimism, whether you're Democrat or Republican in the United States. Your boy Trudeau flew down to meet Trump. So we see that just like Doug was starting the conversation, that if you talk tough in a straightforward manner, and you have the integrity to where people think you're going to back it up, you can still make things happen.
So you're using Trudeau as an example there? Is that what you're saying?
Well, all I know
I'm a little confused.
The Mexican president, female president, said, I didn't have that. No, we're not going to do that. And all of a sudden, 2 of the caravans got turned around. If your threat is credible, the worst thing you can ever say to somebody is, if you do that again, I'm going to punch you in the nose, and they do it again, you don't punch them in the nose. Like everything else in life, you have to do what you say you're going to do. And then all of a sudden, like, it's easier because people start to rely on you and count on you.
I agree with you. If you're going to throw a Hail Mary pass, make it a real pass. I agree. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, closing out the year, it's just been an incredible year for automotive with everything that we've seen from the CDK debacle and everything and the Cars Act in the States and everything else that has challenged our industry, but showing how resilient we are. We've bounced back, and I almost think we've bounced back better. The NADA in New Orleans should be an interesting event, being in one building rather than 2 in Vegas. And I can never understand why you have to have it in two venues. But
exercise.
Yeah, well, it was too much. The other thing is, I think it's gonna I think it's gonna be a better show, just because of that. And I think moving forward into 2025, I think the dealers are going to pivot in a direction where they're going to see AI come into play. They're going to see where that's going to allow them to free up capital. And that is not just financial capital, but human capital.
Right.
And they're going to direct those individuals and cost savings to other opportunities. The dealers that pocket that will lose. The dealers that invest in that will win. And that's my prediction for 2025. Invest everything you save moving forward with technology, invest back into your people, and you will guarantee a better outcome for 2025.
Great. And if you are available for next week's show, it is on the predictions. So obviously we'll be hearing predictions from all sides. But last word to Brandy below me here on the Hollywood Squares.
Now I'm ready. Now that I actually know what the closing comment should actually look like.
No, it could be anything you want. It's an open show. It's all good. Go ahead.
I know, but still, I would say kind of a little bit of what we touched on today is don't be afraid to try something different. I cannot stress that enough. We all say we've all been doing it the same way and nobody wants to pedal out into the unknown, but to get into the top 3%, you have to be prepared to do what the other 97% won't. And so what I mean by this is, explore other departments doing things that will capitalize on a bigger picture. You know, I just had a conversation today or yesterday about how the service department isn't allowed to sell a warranty or a pro pack because finance doesn't like it. And to me, that's absolutely, I'm a seasoned business manager. If you didn't get it the first time, you need to let somebody else take their crack. And actually empowering other departments, if you aren't doing that, such a shortfall. And yeah, don't be afraid to try something different. Be a purple cow for once, you know?
Understand. I mean, what I think really shocked me. I'm reading a book right now about the gentleman who bought the World Trade Center site right before the towers came down. And the book he's written is about his real estate career, but he made a $3.2 billion bet right before the towers came down for a 99-year lease. His monthly payment was $10 million US. And he was like, I was going to have breakfast that day. My wife told me I had to go see the doctor, so I didn't go to breakfast. If I had I would have been dead because he was going to have breakfast, breakfast at the top of the building.
I'll give you, since you're talking about books, get a book called Loon Shots.
Loon Shots?
Yeah, loons, as in Loon, as the bird, loon.
Yeah.
Loon Shots, not moon shots, loon shots.
Yeah, this book is, I'll check that out.
Because loon shots are one step beyond moon shots. They're so crazy that you're loony.
The book is called The Rising, and the gentleman's name is Larry Silverstein. And he's a multi-billionaire, still works at 94 years old, but he's been in real estate, I think, for 70 years in Manhattan. And he was actually behind rebuilding the World Trade Centers after. So it's a really interesting book so far. I highly recommend. But on talk about challenging situations. So he was building this building. He had a client who wanted a building with 2 million square feet. So he had the client, and for one reason or another, it took longer to build than needed. And the client was like, no, I'm not interested anymore. He says, I have a $300 million loan. I got 4 stories going up, and I got nobody to rent it. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. He turned it around, but it was very interesting. It's like, yeah, that's a big problem. All right, have yourself a great week. All the best for Cyber Monday. I know Peter's going to buy a lot of stuff behind him there on Cyber Monday.
I see you, Brandy.
All right.
Likewise. Good to see you guys.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
You too.